and welcome to the Catenion webinar series. My name is Dr. Ana Costa.
And I'm Dr. Ikinoza, consultant at Catenion, a science-driven consulting firm for the biopharma industry. At Catenion, we leverage our science and technology expertise to develop strategies to help our clients drive innovation and bring treatments to the market.
Today we will talk about female health, a topic in which Catenion has gained a deep expertise while working with biopharma companies across the globe. Females make up half of the world's population, but surprisingly, female health has been considered a niche market and a mere subset of healthcare. It is important to note that female health encompasses much more than just reproduction. Female health can be defined as a branch of medicine that focuses on the treatment and diagnosis of conditions that affect the female's physical and emotional well-being. These are both female-specific conditions and general healthcare conditions that affect females differently or disproportionately. For this analysis, we will neither focus on female cancer indications, as they are already an area of major focus in female health, nor on disease highly prevalent in females, since, by definition, they also affect males. Moreover, we will focus on companies that develop drugs to treat female health conditions. We will also touch upon femtech at the end of this webinar. To be accurate, it is important to mention that when referring to females throughout this webinar, we are referring to people with uteri who may or may not identify as a woman. In order to understand female health as a field, it is important that we look at the history of both innovation and policy aspects. In fact, policies have strongly influenced the shape of the field since the late 70s, when females with childbearing potential were excluded from clinical trials due to thalidomide. This was the case until 1993, 16 years later, when the FDA rescinded such guideline. It is important to mention that several drugs used to date and highly genericized today were developed and approved during this time frame. Still, in 2001, two-thirds of all clinical trials excluded females. It was already 2016 when one of the major funding entities, the NIH in US, implemented a policy on sex as a biological variable in research. Studies conducted by the NIH in the years following the 1993 Act did include more females, yet about 75% of the studies published in 4 major journals in the years following failed to analyze data by gender. Several reports and efforts were made during these years in order to bring this to the policymakers' attention. Innovation has anyway made its presence, but at a very slow pace. The birth control pill is undeniable one of the major breakthroughs, not only for reproductive justice, but also for the management of several female indications. Nevertheless, major breakthroughs on the pathophysiology of female prevalent disease and innovative treatments are still lacking. Basing healthcare solutions only on male physiology opens the door to suboptimal outcomes. For example, females experience adverse reactions nearly twice as often as males and are significantly more likely to be hospitalized due to adverse events. Yet, for decades, females were underrepresented in clinical trials, and the FDA didn't start looking into these problems of gender equality in studies until the late 90s. A 2020 study found a drug dose gender gap for 86 different medications approved by the FDA, including antidepressants, cardiovascular and anti-seizure drugs, as well as painkillers, meaning that medications are often overprescribed to females because clinical trials were conducted only on males, and females experienced worse side effects in 90% of the cases. The study also concluded that this difference was not explained by sex difference in body weight. Despite this difference, sex-specific dose recommendations are not in place in most drugs. One example is Zolpidem, approved in 1992. Only after decades of post-marketing reports of cognitive deficits in females, given the standard male dose, were sex-based dose adjustments developed. Understanding these and other sex differences is essential for drug safety and effectiveness in males and females, and for the minimization of adverse events, particularly during pregnancy, with most sex difference data obtained via post-hoc analysis of small samples. The common practice of prescribing equal drug doses to female and male neglects sex difference in pharmacokinetics and disparities in body weight, risks over-medication of female, and contributes to female bias adverse drug reactions. Consequently, several drugs and devices have been pulled out of the market due to adverse events in females. In fact, in 2000, the US Government Accountability Office examined several drugs that the FDA approved for widespread use and then later withdrew due to safety issues, and concluded that 8 in 10 of these drugs pose a greater threat to females than to males. Ideally, clinical trials should provide insight on how certain drugs may affect females differently than males, and this information should be available. But we have already learned that it has not been the case. There are several drugs that cause various severe problems for females. For example, DES, a synthetic form of estrogen, was approved in the 40s to prevent miscarriage, although studies already in the 50s flagged the drug led to vaginal cancer, infertility, and breast cancer. More than 20 years were needed for this drug to be withdrawn. Another example is Pondimin, an appetite suppressant highly prescribed to females that was on the market for over 20 years before it was finally pulled out. A more recent example is Essure, a permanent sterilizing implant which led females to experience pain, device migration, perforation, heavier periods, and failure to prevent pregnancy. The device was withdrawn in 2018 after several device-associated deaths and thousands of reportable events. The latest example is the transvaginal mesh, which was withdrawn in late 2019 after the FDA issued its first warning in 2008 due to serious complications associated with transvaginally placed surgical mesh to treat stress urinary incontinence and pelvic organ prolapse. Nevertheless, there are medical devices still on the market today that pose a higher risk to females, such as laparoscopic power morcellators. Although the FDA continues to recommend limiting its use to selected females undergoing myomectomy or hysterectomy, it is still on the market and used in approximately 10% of robotic hysterectomies. The most prominently used drug classes within the female health field are anti-infectives for gynecological infections, painkillers and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs for the relief of menstrual pain, hormone replacement therapy for the relief of menopausal symptoms, and contraceptives for the regulation of menstruation and the prevention of pregnancy. All these therapies have experienced little to no innovation and have been used for many years. Therefore, they are mostly genericized. In fact, among the female health drugs in the market, more than 2/3 have an expired patent. Despite these developments and genericized medications that have improved the quality of life of females in general, the unmet need remains high across many female health conditions. When looking at the numbers, 1 out of 4 females at reproductive age experience menstrual disorders. Moreover, by 2030, 1.2 billion females around the world will be in menopause, and 73% of postmenopausal people experience hot flashes, fatigue, sleep disturbances, which increase the dependency on medications, impairing the quality of life. And 25% of these females, which are 220 million people, will experience severe symptoms of menopause. Sexual dysfunction disorders are the most prevalent disorders in females, with 40% of females affected. Infertility affects a lower proportion of females compared to the other mentioned indications, which is approximately 20% of heterosexual females in the US. When it comes to reproductive autonomy, in developed countries, 45% of females who decide to terminate their pregnancy do not have access to safe abortions. On average, unsafe abortions lead to 10% of deaths of persons who give birth. Moreover, the mortality rate of persons who give birth in the US doubled between 2002 and 2018, with Black females being disproportionately affected. Overall, the discrepancy increases significantly in minority groups and those with low socioeconomic status. It is well described that modern medicine was developed with male physiology as a default. On top of that, several factors are thought to contribute to low diagnosis and treatment rates in female health, many of which relate to gender inequality. For example, in many societies, socioeconomic inequalities limit females' access to health information and healthcare services. Social stigma relating to female physiological processes, such as menstruation, can lead to patients being reluctant to seek treatments for menstrual disorders. A further significant barrier to innovative drug development includes the low political priority historically allocated to female health disorders. In terms of healthcare delivery, despite reporting more severe levels, frequencies, and durations of pain, reports show that females are less likely to be treated for pain. Also, a gap in female representation in VCs, grant agencies, editorial roles in scientific journals, C-suites of pharma and biotech poses as another factor contributing for an imbalanced distribution of resources. When compared to type 2 diabetes, for example, it becomes clear that the prevalence of these female indications is much higher. The main unmet need remaining in these indications is the understanding of the etiology and pathophysiology of the disease, which leads to limited treatment options. The number of scientific publications related to the search terms women and female health, as well as the related indications, has increased in the last 20 years. It is also clear that patent applications have significantly increased in the last decade, led by polycystic ovary syndrome, infertility, and endometriosis. It is estimated that only 4% of the healthcare R&D spending in the US goes directly to female health, and only 1% focus on areas outside of oncology. There is a disparity between the percentage of females affected by a specific disease and the amount of funding for female-focused projects addressing that disease. Male prevalent diseases get 2 times the amount of research funding when compared to female prevalent ones. In 75% of cases where a disease afflicts primarily one gender, the funding pattern favors males. Also in preclinical research, we can see a disparity, where male animal models are used much more frequently. Moreover, in clinical trials, the stigma surrounding female health and certain socioeconomic factors make it harder to recruit females.
Looking at the main players and assets, most marketed drugs are indicated for infertility and anovulation. Other highly prevalent indications such as endometriosis are underserved, with only 10% of marketed drugs targeting these patients. In addition to infertility and endometriosis, dysmenorrhea, amenorrhea, and abnormal uterine bleeding combined make up almost 30% of the marketed drugs. When looking at the pipeline of drugs in female health, the focus on infertility is still rather high, but there is a shift observed in indications like dysmenorrhea, amenorrhea, and abnormal uterine bleeding, which have little pipeline activity. This is likely due to the focus on the underlying conditions that lead to these symptoms. Lastly, we see novel indications with a prominent focus in the pipeline, such as female sexual dysfunction and premature ovarian failure. The top 40 players in female health have most of their marketed drugs for infertility, menstrual disorders, menopause, endometriosis, and contraception. These are mostly hormonal contraceptives going through life cycle management with new formulations of their existing marketed assets. When focusing on the active pipelines, endometriosis stands out as the top indication, with most of the key players working on it. Regarding deals, key market players are adopting strategies that allow them to use resources to develop new products. Both big pharma and major players are collaborating with small companies for new product development. For instance, in August 2020, Bayer added a menopause drug to their pipeline with their Candy acquisition. In December 2020, Myovant Sciences and Pfizer announced a collaboration to develop and commercialize Relugolix and Myfembree for uterine fibroids and endometriosis. Forecasts indicate that sales of therapies for female health conditions, excluding cancer, are expected to increase from $9 billion in 2021 to $14 billion in 2028. Menopause stands out with the highest yearly growth rate. So why invest in female health? Firstly, females represent half of the world's population. Secondly, an increased lifespan also means that females are going through more menstrual cycles and longer menopause, therefore have a higher need for treatments for the related indications. Chronic diseases with a higher prevalence among females are becoming increasingly more common. Female health disorders lead to decreased school performance in young females and decreased work productivity in adults. Because females are often caretakers of children and the elderly, healthier females lead to healthier societies. Females make more healthcare decisions for their families and spend more than males on healthcare. A 2020 report by Women's Health Access Matters concluded that investing just $300 million into women's health could end up generating $13 billion to the economy. Furthermore, when data was aggregated by sex, studies found that depression is more often fatal in men, and men are more likely to develop early-onset Alzheimer's. So, research that takes sex into account benefits both sexes. VC funding for female health has largely increased since 2020. The first 7 months of 2020 alone seem promising, with 15 capital raisings through VC already. These include Freya Pharma Solutions, Gameto, Oviva Therapeutics, and Temple Therapeutics. Female health is largely powered by female entrepreneurs who identify with the unmet needs and can foresee the potential of solving those. There's a huge opportunity in female health that is currently being missed out by many investors. The term femtech refers to diagnostic tools, consumer products, services, wearables, and software that use technology to address female health issues such as fertility, prenatal and postpartum support, fertility monitoring, menstrual cycle tracking, sexual wellness, menopause, and pelvic care and general health care. Although investment has nearly tripled in the past 5 years, reaching up to almost $2 billion, femtech startups still receive only 5% of all digital healthcare funding. 2021 was a record year for the femtech industry, with global VC investment reaching over $2.4 billion. To conclude, we would like to echo UK's Women Health Ambassador, Dame Leslie Regan, who stated, "Although women usually live longer than men, they spend considerably more time in poor health. Female health is under-researched, under-invested, and undervalued by the traditional healthcare model. There is a huge missed opportunity for biopharma in female health, going beyond indications specific to the female physiology. This opportunity can be leveraged by conducting academic research directly comparing disease etiology, physiology, and development in sex-specific research models. Funding entities should actively increase the amount of research grants for such studies. Investors should systematically scout for profitable opportunities in female health, currently dominated by generics. With increasing understanding of the female health conditions, biopharma should start developing innovative assets with novel mechanisms of action. Lastly, trial designs that consider sex as a fundamental variable are likely to uncover the full potential of a drug's efficacy and avoid the market withdrawals due to safety issues. Overall, Catanion believes female health to be an underexploited market with a huge potential for innovation and socioeconomic returns in healthcare and beyond. That was Catanion's review of female health. Thank you for watching.
Check out our other webinars and publications on our website and our YouTube channel. Follow us on LinkedIn for our latest updates. Please reach out if you have any comment or question regarding the topics and points we raised.
See you next time.